Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Money Talk with Melanie. This afternoon, I hope everyone is doing well. I feel like I have, I'm broadcasting live, first of all. Hey, Lindsay Dawson, Will, Chris Harris, hi. Keith Houchin, welcome. So happy to see you. I feel like I have resting, you know what face, because it I have to tell you guys, I have to do the thing, right? Broadcasting live from Cape May, which it's actually gorgeous outside, from beautiful Cape May County today via SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio and television. And, you know, I totally debated not doing the show today because everything seems trivial when there's a national tragedy, right? And talking about cryptocurrency seems trivial, frankly, when, you know, people lost their lives trying to have fun at a concert. And I vacillated all day. I fought all day. I started my day teaching class. Hi, Philip. And Linda and David and anyone else I missed, welcome. Thank you for watching and listening. You know, I vacillated back and forth. I'm going to be honest with you. Since I taught class this morning, I vacillated back and forth trying to figure out whether or not I was going to do the show today. Because like I said, hello, Nick. It all just seems really trivial. And then I thought to myself, you know, it's a terror attack, and that's kind of the whole goal, right? And a friend of mine, you know, we were talking about last night. I was talking to him about we're talking about the whole larger picture kind of thing, and how, you know, if you're a believer, you know, what Satan does is, you know, he tries to scratch at you and scare you, but, you know, ultimately God's got you. But, you know, what Satan tries to do is get you run out in the street and get hit by a car from a spiritual perspective. And if you're a spiritual person, if you're a believer, you kind of know what I mean. So God decided to do the show, and hopefully I'm not being too cryptic for anyone, but I don't know. It's just, we have to keep ourselves and our loved ones covered in prayer. That's the bottom line, because it's just a dangerous world out here. Unfortunately, it's a dangerous world out here. So hopefully I made the right decision. You just never know if you're making the right decision. So hopefully you guys learn a little bit about cryptocurrency and BitChains. And I've been trying to get this expert on for a minute now. And this guy, I'm not going to mention his name. I don't want to, we still don't know what his deal is. This person who decided to take 58 people out and injure 500 people for no apparent reason other than Satan and his minions decided to have a field day today or last night. But anyway, I'm uncharacteristically speechless. If you know anything about me, I always have something to say. But this kind of thing makes me uncharacteristically speechless. Just can't, I have no words when things like this happen, other than to increase my prayer and encourage others to do the same. Just horrible. And, you know, the people in Puerto Rico are still suffering. Hello, Susan Tui. People in Puerto Rico, people from Hurricane Harvey, still recovering as well. And the other hurricane survivors still going through what they are going through. If you want, Tamara Kleinberg, hello. Good to see you here. So if you want to donate to an organization that is a non-denominational Christian organization, and the money will not go to the administrators, but will get to where it needs to go and help the victims of these natural disasters, please do consider 8 Days of Hope, spelled out 8 days, EIGHT, daysofhope.com. So I want to make sure that I say that. Also, I want to thank my sponsors, Eva Rosenberg, aka the Tax Mama. Do visit her website if you feel so inclined. She answers your tax questions for free, and she's an expert in all things taxes. And with the new tax laws that eventually are going to come out, maybe. She will come in handy. And she has 2 award-winning books, by the way. Business Taxes Made Easy and Deduct Everything. I'd also like to thank my sponsor, David Barnett of businessbuyeradvantage.com. If you've ever considered a franchise, which is easier and easier nowadays, you want to go to his website, businessbuyeradvantage.com, and check out all the free instructional videos or one of his books, Franchise Warnings or 21 Stupid Things People Do when Trying to Buy a Business. Donna McCleary is here. There will be no Obama bashing today, Donna McCleary, so you should be pretty happy about that. Ron Edwards, hello there, darling. Deontay Johnson, hello. Very good to see you. I think Deontay Johnson, and if you are still doing that, sweetie, if you're still doing a prayer call, please put the information in the chat. And there's a brand new Ron Edwards notebook, and there also is a brand new Melanie's Money Minute this week on tipping. I think you will find interesting. Melanie's A Few Minutes of Personal Finance is brand new this week, and you'll hear that during the break. And it is on tipping. I felt, and I do it in a tad bit of levity that I think you may enjoy. Hopefully. So that's going to be during the break, which is actually in 2 minutes. I will be back on Sirius XM, Patriot 125 on Wednesday this week. So if you'd like to call in on Patriot 125, all liberals are welcome on Patriot 125. I had one call in last week and tell me I was a racist because she did not realize that I was brown. So that was interesting, which I've had happen before. I actually had I owned a property. So I was a landlord a while ago, and I had this guy accuse me of being a white racist who didn't care about the property, which, by the way, I used to live in that neighborhood. And he said I was a white racist who didn't care about the property because my tenant had done something wrong. And he did not realize that I was brown and used to live there. You could imagine his shock in court. So the same thing happened on Sirius the other night. She's like, obviously, you've never lived in a big city, in the inner city, which I had. And obviously, I was not brown, which I am. So it was very amusing. She was audibly shocked to learn that I was brown and a Republican. It was fun. So if you have an opportunity to join me on Patriot tonight, that's the kind of good fun that I have on Patriot tonight on Sirius XM. Mel, yes, Ron Edwards show. Oh, good. Okay, so Ron Edwards, is your show already airing? If so, please put the information in the chat. I'd appreciate it. That would be absolutely awesome. But by the way, the only thing other thing I'm going to mention, besides obviously the tragedy in Las Vegas that I talked about earlier, is that the wage gap, and this is kind of Claudia Cheek, hello. The wage gap among African Americans and Hispanics without high school diplomas has grown. And this is important. We need to stay in school. It's one of the reasons why I went into teaching, which in the first place, in public schools, which slowly but surely over 7 years tried to devour my soul. But that's another story. But was because I just didn't feel as though there were enough African Americans in the public school system, to set the example. And kudos to Donna McCleary for still hanging in there and being in the public school system. She's a public school teacher, and good for her. We both used to be admin assistants in private schools and got out to make a difference in the public school system. That's what we did, and kudos to her for still being in there. I personally couldn't take it, so I got out. But the wage gap among African Americans and Hispanics who don't have high school diplomas has widened. We need to somehow keep our people in. We got to stay in school. We got to at least get high school diplomas. Anywho, you're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. We are going to have our guest coming back soon. I haven't heard from him yet, so I got to find out where he is. But we'll be back. We'll be back in a few moments. Hopefully he'll be calling. But anyway, you're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. We're entering a break in a moment. A new Ron Edwards notebook right now.
The plots, plans, and tricks to overthrow America. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards on today's page from the Edwards Notebook. In American society today, to say stuff has hit the fan is an enormous understatement. When I observe everything ranging from Trump-hating, American flag disrespecting, oppressed multi-millionaire athletes kneeling, sitting, or remaining in their locker room during the national anthem, or an NFL commissioner who didn't even allow Dallas Cowboy football players to wear patches to honor police officers slain while protecting America and police haters, yet supports anti-flag protests. When I witness the ongoing college campus protests against freedom of expression, unless those speaking hate America and want to overthrow our republic and replace capitalism with communism. When you read about the growing support for bigoted anti-Christian activity, while allowing the teaching of Islam in government schools, or the effort to flood our media and public discourse with never-ending complaints about racism, oppression, and Americanism, it is an orchestrated movement by Antifa groups to accomplish a complete doing away with our constitutionally limited form of government. Wake up, America. The enemy is here. I'm Ron Edwards. Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
Who likes paying taxes? Nobody. That's why Eva Rosenberg from TaxMama.com wants you to pay less of them. Read Small Business Taxes Made Easy and learn how to set up a business plan that minimizes taxes, the tax benefits of different forms of financing, spot and fix errors in the 1099s, legally increase your deductible expenses with better record-keeping techniques. Don't let the IRS squeeze you out of every penny. Start deducting today. Visit TaxMama.com. TaxMama.com. That's TaxMama with one M.com.
My name is David Barnett, and I've been helping people buy and sell small and medium-sized businesses since 2008. So far this year, I've gone on 5 vacations. It's because I've got my own business. When you get tired of being managed by someone else and you decide that business ownership is right for you without the risk of starting your own unproven enterprise, then come over to businessbuyeradvantage.com. There are over 100 YouTube videos on buying and selling businesses that you can watch for free. That's businessbuyeradvantage.com.
Okay, and we're back. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. This is your business diva, Melanie Collette. And I do believe that Carol called during the break. How are you?
Hey, how are you doing, Melanie?
I'm awesome. Welcome to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to connect with you via video, but that's okay. I'm glad I have you on the line. I want to introduce you to our audience. You work with Bitshares, correct?
I do indeed.
Indeed. And what's your position there? I couldn't seem to locate that.
Yeah, it is right now, I would say chief strategist, but it is in flux. I sometimes serve as an ambassador and sometimes as an educator.
Ah, very good. Excellent. So give the audience an idea of your background, because the way that role came about is very unique. Your path or your journey to get there before we get into the minutiae.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so the most basic thing I can say is I'm a New Yorker, and that's an education in and of itself.
Amen.
I'm born in Manhattan.
Yes.
And from there, it's been kind of a wild ride. I've been a lay-ordained Zen Buddhist monk. I've been a writer in Hollywood. I've trained with Tony Robbins in entrepreneurship and leadership. I've been a world traveler, a writer, a speaker, and an educator.
Excellent. Excellent. I love it. I love it. I saw that in your bio and I was like, wow. And so now you work with Bitcoins, with Bitshares, and you do the whole technology and money thing. Now we had Darren on last week and we talked mostly about the Bitcoins and cryptocurrency, but we didn't talk about the blockchain aspect. We just kind of grazed it, but we didn't talk about, you know, what it was. So I'm sure the audience kind of like, we grazed it, and I'm sure the audience was kind of like, wait, what did he say? What did he say? So I wanted to kind of dig into that a little deeper so that the audience, because I kind of did the teacher thing. I'm a former public school teacher and I'm still an adjunct professor. So I kind of did the teacher thing and said, all you need to know is that Bitcoins are built on energy. And that's all I'm going to tell you for now. Kind of like, where do babies come from? Out of mom's stomach. That's all you need to know for now. You know, I did that thing. That's all you need to know for now. So,
wow.
You know what I mean? That's all you need to know for now. You don't need to know the details. So
exactly. Right.
And then of course, you know, once they get to be around 10, they're like, wait a minute. No, hang on. There's also missing some details here.
You know, I remember the same conversations when the internet was first introduced.
Right. Like, wait, but wait. Yeah, there's more. Yeah. So
all right. So you want to dive right in, and what is this thing and why is it such a big deal?
Yes. What is this thing, and why should we as consumers and people who like handle money and spend money and save money, why should we be concerned about this?
All right. So the why is very, very captivating, and it's based on very simple principles. And the technology is kind of the how that's kind of technical. So I would have to say you kind of have to pick one first, and then we can support with the other. So if you had to pick, like, which one's more important, the how it works or why people should be interested?
Why should people be interested?
Okay, there we go. So let's look at it like this. I liken it to being on a large boat. Have you ever been on like a cruise ship or something?
Indeed, I have.
Have you noticed how they have little lifeboats on the side?
Indeed, I have. First thing I noticed.
All right, so first thing you notice, yeah, it's kind of captivating because it's like, oh, wow, I could imagine, God forbid, if I needed to, getting into one of those, and that'd be kind of scary. But you know what? In that case, you'd be awful glad it was there.
Right.
So I liken cryptocurrency to a lifeboat of our current economic system.
That used to be gold.
It used to be gold, but the millennials have come along and we have spoken and would basically say that we don't really believe in gold for one primary reason. Unless you physically hold it yourself, unless you physically have it in your possession, you don't own it. That's
true. And you found out that, like, we don't actually have it.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Like us
right?
older folks we don't actually have it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of, it's like, how do you even think about that, right? That's the problem.
There's that.
But whereas when you talk about cryptocurrency, when you have it in your wallet, you own it. You can travel anywhere in the world and access it. So it has the type of transportability that we wish our money system had. It has speed, it has efficiency, but most importantly, when you own whatever cryptocurrency you own it, no one else.
Exactly. And I just want to, for the millennials that are listening and may not totally get what I mean when I said that used to be gold, just a quick and dirty on that. Literally, the money that we have in our hand, the cash that we have in our hand used to represent, gold, like dollar for gold, like that gold used to be sitting somewhere, and it used to represent gold, and that is no longer the case. And so the United States has been playing a very dangerous game with our currency, and it doesn't work that way anymore. So I'm sorry, continue.
Yeah, and then when you look at it, like if you were looking at the Titanic, oh, it can't sink, no problem. It's this thing, but lo and behold, if it hits a big enough iceberg, it sinks. We see that with economies on the national scale, whether it's Greece or Venezuela. Literally, one day they are fine. There's commerce going on, hardworking people, just like here in America. You've got investors and traders and doctors and teachers, and then literally over the course of a weekend.
Yep.
So it happens all the time. The challenge with our current hyper-centralized system is that nowadays, if one fails, it kind of drags them all into the death spiral with it.
Yep.
So if ever there was a time to really have some sort of alternative, if only to kind of get a compare and contrast to what we currently have, now is the time, and it looks like of all the different options that are available, cryptocurrency seems to fulfill the bill.
Now, is there any way out of that for cryptocurrency? Like, is there any way for, especially once the government regulators get their grubby little hands on it?
There are, of course, enormous risks with cryptocurrency. If there were not risks, you would not see such potential gains. That's the standard market evaluation.
Right.
So there is risk with cryptocurrency. We see it all the time. We see it with China. China has a completely different economic strategy, and the government felt that its softly approach was ignored, and so then it went hard on Bitcoin in particular,
right,
only to find that marketplace just leapt over to Japan, and Japan is much more crypto-friendly. So they were much more endorsing, and then that market just went over there. But still, that's just the denial of it. That's not yet a government or central banking institutions actually trying to take control of it.
Right. True. Not yet.
Not yet. I mean, one would have to say we're talking about very modest sums of money. I mean, if you add up all of the cryptocurrencies, it's just a drop in the bucket. We have to say, how could such a modest commodity be attracting such attention? How could it be perceived as a threat by banking institutions and by governments?
Right.
And it's in that potential threat that is the value for the public.
Exactly. Okay. All right. So that's why we should care. And
Yeah.
I now this is something that I don't think that a lot of the public at large is aware of yet. If you go to, I don't know, you can go to a website and find and get a list of the number of companies that accept, for example, Bitcoin is probably at this point one of the most commonly used cryptocurrencies, right?
Yes.
And there are a number, Amazon, Overstock.com, there are a number, eBay, I believe. There are a number of very common, well-known websites that accept Bitcoins.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised. And like I was in DC a few weeks ago. I'm in DC relatively often. And there's ATMs all around DC that accept that where you can convert to Bitcoins.
That's correct.
Yeah. So it's not all that uncommon nowadays.
Yeah, it shifted. It shifted recently. I mean, you even have things called, like the BitPay card, which functions like a Visa. It's like a prepaid credit card, and you can load up Bitcoin. Actually, probably load up other currencies on it, and just spend it as you would any other form of digital dollars.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we understand why we should care. How does it work, and what does the blockchain have to do with it?
Right. Okay. So when we start to look at this, what we're really talking about is software.
Okay.
This is kind of a very important distinction. Okay, because we do know the difference between software and hardware. For example, you turn on your computer physically to log on to your email, but your email is not on the computer.
Right.
The email is somewhere else in a whole web of servers with information stored in the cloud. That's essentially software architecture. It's very direct impacts. Like when you go to Amazon, it's this brilliant thing. It is a digital forum Instead of a warehouse where you go physically and buy things, you can look online, purchase them online with digital currency, and then it gets sent to your home. So in the same way, the first element that we're looking at is a software, and that's really the foundation. Blockchain is a software program. It is actually a solution to a puzzle that eluded cryptographers for quite a long while. And it was basically how to create trust between an exchange of value between two parties without a third party intermediary.
Now, someone in the chat just asked, how is it backed? And I feel like you're about to get to that.
Right. So ultimately, you have to kind of compare and contrast. When we say what backs the U.S. dollar, for example.
Right.
Well, so one could say nothing, which isn't completely true.
Right.
There's government, there's belief, there's the U.S. military, there's the fact that it's the world reserve currency, and currently it is a primary currency you would have to trade in order to purchase oil. Now, all those factors are changing as we speak, but that's a lot that backs the U.S. dollar, even though it isn't backed traditionally by gold and silver as it once was.
Exactly.
So in the same way, cryptocurrency ultimately is backed by the users themselves, can be used to execute what's known as smart contracts. In other words, it's not so different from the tally stick system of medieval England. I don't know if you're familiar, or if your listeners are aware, but that was a monetary system that lasted for 1,000 years that didn't use money. It just basically used a system of sticks to say that an exchange of value had occurred so that people could balance out the ledgers each year.
You ever seen, I don't know if you've ever seen a cartoon called Teen Titans, where they explain currency backed by gold and they say anything can be used as that's what you just did. That's exactly the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's been examples even in American history. For example, during the Great Depression, there was a coal mine owner who recognized the need, at least for the local economy, to be able to settle accounts and create IOUs. And he said what he would do is you could use those IOUs for anything you needed in town, but you could also come to his mine and he would give you an equivalent value in coal. So he agreed to back this currency by coal. With that one backing that added legitimacy to the belief in it, it started to spread far and wide.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So it is really no different. It's no different than what we're doing with our currency, especially since we left the gold for dollars, since we left the gold standard.
Well, with one
exception,
there is one primary difference though, and it's a twofold but very simple.
Right.
The issue with cryptocurrency though is that you may have heard the term decentralized. That means there's not like a boardroom of individuals smoking cigars deciding who's going to raise the rates. It doesn't work like that.
Right.
And the other thing is that there's a public ledger and a public record. See, for individual accounts, there's an overall awareness about what the entire marketplace is doing, and we have nothing resembling that in relation to our digital dollars.
Okay. So I guess now my question is, like, okay, so where is, where's the well, I guess that's just kept on the, it's I would imagine it's publicly traded. Like that's where you would monitor that? Is that?
It's ultimately a network effect, not dissimilar from social media.
Okay. And where, I guess you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
you know what I'm asking.
I feel you. No, I feel you. No, but these are the important questions, okay?
Right.
And you got to get underneath it because let's be frank. We've been promised all sorts of things before, and it just didn't quite come, right?
Yeah.
We were expecting to be living the Jetsons now, right? And instead, we're living in a 1950s architecture with infrastructure falling apart, and people are more confused than ever before, not more enlightened.
Right.
So underneath it, really what you're looking at is who controls this, who's accountable for it. If something goes wrong, who do I go to? Correct?
Well, yeah. Yes.
So underneath it all, the first breakthrough, which is kind of a head trip, but it's important to get to, is the actual tool of cryptography itself. Okay, remember, for many years, the NSA and many governments around the world considered cryptography the same as a munition, the same as an atom bomb, to be regulated and controlled and never allowed into public use.
So this is when we get back to the blockchain.
Right. Exactly, right?
Okay.
So the blockchain is built upon cryptography. Okay, without cryptography, the blockchain has merit, but it's part of a total breakthrough in the way we can communicate over distances, in the way that we can create something that is impervious or at least more resilient to the normal control dramas. Okay, but it's not perfect. Remember, we're just coming up into awareness that most of our private data is not private at all. It's actually public.
Right.
We thought it was private, but it wasn't encrypted. It wasn't protected. It wasn't on secure networks. And then again, who could you really trust with your private data if not you?
Right. Right.
Okay. So in the same vein, as people start to reclaim the recognition of the necessity of privacy in their communications, in the awareness of, you need to know how your machines work. You need to understand the internet. You need to understand how these currencies relate in terms of our current economy, so that then you can get the compare and contrast to the new one. Ultimately, people will start adopting cryptocurrency long before they have deep understanding of it. Just like email is still used today, and most people don't really know what the internet is.
Oh, no.
But in this one, yeah.
Listen, I still don't know how the fax machine works, okay?
Exactly. So, and it's understood. It's totally, there's a lot of empathy, but where we're at right now is you have groups of very, very smart beings. They are nerds to the extreme. We play Dungeons and Dragons or live role-playing, whatever. But very, very bright, very, very caring, and we're presenting tools that have been available for about 20 years, and it's just now starting to crack into the early adopter phase, where especially fintech guys, especially people interested in doing ICOs or initial coin offerings, just a form of crowdsourced funding, they're starting to see the power of this currency in terms of its speed, its efficacy, and its guaranteed replacement of the current digital monetary system.
Is there, on the other side of the break, and we talked to Darren a little bit, Dylan. We talked to Dylan a little bit about this, because we talked about, you know, the worldwide appeal of this and the philanthropic aspect of this, and the fact that it's international, which can help keep the government's little grubby hands off of it, which is helpful, which means we can help, you know, we can help these, you know, third world countries that need help without having to go through the government and it taking more time. You know what I mean? I saw a fantastic TED Talk about how these philanthropists were able to, you know, bring resources to these third world countries without having to go through the Red Crosses of the world. Not to knock the Red Cross, but you know, there's some issues.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
There's issues. Oh yeah.
There's some issues. Without having to go through the Red Crosses of the world, so that they can bring monies using cryptocurrency, and they can bring resources to these countries without having to deal with the Red Crosses of the world. And I'm all for that. If you're going to be able to bring monies, you know, and resources to these countries to you know, build, you know, get the oil out of the ground, and so that they can be self-sufficient. I'm all for that. Using private companies and private resources, not the government. You know, anytime the government's there to help, you know what happens. So I'm just saying. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. This is your business diva, Melanie Collette. We have Carol I apologize, Kiril. We have Kiril Ravensong from Bitshares talking to us about cryptocurrency, the blockchain, and your money, telling us why this is important to us and what it's backed by. Very interesting information, actually. So we'll be back in a few minutes. And up next is your few minutes of personal finance. And I'm talking about tipping. I think it's going to be interesting. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Hello and welcome to this week's Few Minutes of Personal Finance with your business diva, Melanie Collette. And this week we cover the most uncomfortable topic of tipping. Yes, when should you tip? There are many people out there who do not seem to know when it is appropriate to tip and when it isn't. So I'm going to cover it for you right now. When should you always tip, and by how much? 15 to 20% you should always tip these particularly service people: your hairstylist and your barber, your taxi driver, your waiter or your waitress, your massage therapist, your manicurist or pedicurist, your animal groomer, your bartender, your bellhop, and your full-service car wash attendant. Now, when is it okay to occasionally tip? Your bus driver or your limo driver, if you're lucky enough to have one. Your wine steward, your mover. These people, it's okay to occasionally tip if you feel so inclined. $1 per passenger for your limo driver is okay. For your wine steward, 15 to 20%. And for your mover, $10 to $20. Now, during the holidays, this can be a particularly uncomfortable time to decide how much to tip. So here are your guidelines. If you're fortunate enough to have a contractor who's working on your home, $15 to $50 per person is okay for your contractor. If you have a house or pool cleaner, up to the total cost of one visit is okay to tip. For paper delivery, $10 to $30. For your pet sitter or pooper scooper, up to 15% of one visit is okay. And if you're fortunate enough to have someone who is maintaining your yard, $20 to $50 is perfectly okay to say thank you. There you are. There you have it. Your personal finance tip of the week with your business diva, Melanie Collette. And remember, all of this is very important because, after all, it is your money.
Power brokers use corrupt politicians, deceptive Islam, and lies from establishment media to turn the once shining city on a hill into the city of the blind. What do the elites fear? One man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me at SHR Media, High Plains Talk Radio, Spreaker, iTunes, and YouTube for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because truth is not always pleasant.
Hello, I'm Tim Hart. I'm the guy BZ hires due to his shameless contract with the SHR Media Network to voice his promos. He'd like me to tell you that the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be found on SHR Media Network, Spreaker, and YouTube every Tuesday and Thursday night at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American media maggots won't. You'll find that the speech is free, but the drinks are not. There, in the saloon, just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, BZ is sending his personal drones of freedom into the wheelhouses and ossicles of lovers of sovereignty and liberty nationally and globally. Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, BZ swears that no rights were harmed in the making of this promo.
Okay, we are back. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. This is your business diva, Melanie Collette. And we have Kiril Ravensong from Bitshares with us, and he's explaining to us about all things blockchain, cryptocurrency, and how we can apply it really in our everyday life and why it's important to us. And Kiril, I'm pronouncing your name correctly, right? Am I saying it right? I didn't ask, and I should have. I apologize.
Kiril.
I apologize. Kiril.
There you go. Like it rhymes with keep it real.
Okay, Kiril. So we were talking about the whole cryptocurrency thing, and I wanted to know: is there any way to keep the government out? Do you think there's a way to especially since it's worldwide, since it's international, has it gone far? It's been around for 10 years. So is there, longer than that, is there any way at this point that we can shut them out because it's international? And because of the blockchain aspect, is there any way to keep them out?
So let me put it to you like this, and at the risk of sounding like a conservative, I would say in this particular instance, I would say that government is not the enemy. It's not necessarily the solution either. I really do see government as still a necessary evil, and that society itself, community particularly, is the foundation of all good.
I'm no anarchist. I just, when they start messing with
No, I get it. No, it's when you find something good, you want to protect it. So I very, very much respect it. The best thing that I can say is that you will find that there are ways to kind of win territory, but it's got to be done through usage. In other words, if communities recognize the power of cryptocurrency to sustain them, then you will have more than enough bright minds and stout hearts who will defend it. But if it gets relegated to the way of, all these other cool opportunities, but no one really seized upon, then in that openness, you will find all sorts of institutions diving in and trying to get between this type of peer-to-peer relationship. That's the real secret underneath the blockchain technology, is that it's not a technological function at all. It's a social function.
Right.
When two individuals agree to engage in commerce, that is an exchange of property for property.
Indeed.
It's a very important distinction. As long as there's no middle person, that exchange of value will occur seamlessly without any particular loss. But the moment there's a third party, things get complicated and expensive.
Right. That's my concern. Because it kind of reminds me of how, how the internet sales are going along just fine. And it's like a lot less expensive to buy things on the internet because you can avoid sales tax in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm.
And then the government's like, about that.
Yeah.
About that sales tax that you guys are avoiding. You're gonna have to cough some of that up. You know what I mean? Like it's right now, really what I kind of see on the docket, because a lot of what we're trying to do with Heronomics and Bitshares is really to be very much exemplars of the most noble way that cryptocurrencies can express themselves in the world. That mainly by being exemplars of assisting industries to use this technology, in philanthropic activities like the relief of suffering after storms and other weather-related crises. Right.
So that's kind of the way that we do it. In other words, I've been a protester, man. I've been on the street. Occupy. I'm a huge fan of it. It's very important. And then how can you keep the government out of something like that? We were infiltrated almost from the very beginning. I've worked side by side with the FBI and Lord knows who and NSA there. So at one hand, what I started to find was more powerful than trying to protect, defend, or be against was to be very clear in what I was for and to stick to that and to stay consistent and stay true to that.
Sure. And that definitely works. And I kind of come from that same camp, and I've been saying that for a while. I'm like, why not get in there and I mean, I'm a conservative, but I work that way as well. I'm like, get in there and be part of the solution.
Yeah.
Get in there and work toward the solution. Get in there and roll your sleeves up, man. And unless you're doing the work, I don't want to hear it.
Right.
So feel you.
In terms of keeping government out, I really don't know. That's the part where I don't have an easy answer. I know that traditionally I don't believe in what we call the silver bullet solutions, like one thing will save us all.
Right.
I actually think life is a little bit more complicated, and the curve of knowledge necessary to create truly secure systems is available theoretically, but the type of mass education required to be able to adopt it,
right,
that's a little bit of a curve, right? So that would have to be addressed in order to create even remotely secure systems. We can do pretty good. We can do pretty well, but not anywhere nearly as secure as what you're asking for.
Indeed. Now, and someone asked the other day when we had oh, come on, Melanie. We had Daryl on the other day. Asked about like how we, and I think the answer is probably going to be the same. You know, how we would be able to do things like keep terrorists from using cryptocurrency, you know, to finance terrorism. And I suspect that the answer is going to be the same. You know, they would probably have the same opportunities as anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, inevitably, when you ask terrorists, what's your favorite medium of exchange, they'll say cash.
Right.
US dollars. It's really handy, super useful, accepted just about everywhere. And you'll notice that many governments around the world are moving towards a cashless society.
Yes. Yes.
Right? So there's that trend. There's that saying, oh, if terrorists and drug cartels are using cash, well, then and that'll get them. But that's not true either, because you'll find that any institution that engages in an exchange of value will end up, if only by proxy, participating in money laundering, participating in terrorism. I mean, who's to say that JP Morgan isn't in one of those myriad of contracts and transactions touching terrorist dollars? How could you even prove it, even with the existing system? Because there actually are greater opportunities to protect against the use with this cryptocurrency system. You know, there are ways of looking at the total market activity that would make it really clear if money was going into strange places for unaccounted purposes. They couldn't do. The difference is that information would be available to everyone, the entire marketplace, not just Secret Service or MI6 or things like that.
True. And you're right about that. You're totally right about that, about those. And oh God. And here's the thing, the punishment, the way the law is structured for your JP Morgans and your Goldman Sachses of the world, and you may find this strange for a conservative to say something like what I'm about to say, but the punishment for those very large financial institutions are negligible for the people who actually commit the crimes. You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to jail. By and large.
Awkward.
They're not. You know what I'm saying? They're not getting locked up.
Yeah.
And right. They should be. You know, they're getting a smack on the wrist, and I'm not doing it again. And what they do, because you know they're so big, and it'll have a negative effect on the economy. And so. You know,
and we wouldn't even under the most ideal circumstances, assuming that all bankers were noble knights, totally selfless monks, you know, even in the best of circumstances, we couldn't possibly derail the entire economic model simply because a handful, really literally a very small percentage, was using it for ill. We would try to find some solution, but there we are right now. Terrorism is a fact of our lives today, and no one, not even the NSA, who is now near total surveillance, has been able to deter it. Right.
And then, you know, of course, there's the whole other issue of the dark web, which the government monitors and has to know of activity that's going on there, which, you know, is a whole nother show.
I heard of a Swami in India who, when the internet was explained to him, said, oh, it's very much like consciousness. On the surface, you have where people shop, and deep down underneath are all the terrible thoughts we hope no one thinks.
Wow. That just hurt my feelings. The level of truth in that statement just hurt my feelings. I just because, you know, as much I'm just saying, because it's just that, I mean, the level of truth is just true. And a lot of people, I didn't even know about the dark web until my computer programming students brought it to my attention. Like, that was my level of naive until about 5 years ago. Like, I just thought the internet was the internet. Like, silly me. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So when people talk about a Titanic hitting an iceberg, remember, all of the blockchain technology is built on top of the existing internet. So it could almost be looked at as like Internet 2.0. In other words, what the internet allows us to do, for good or for ill, right? It allows you to share information in any digital format. And what blockchain allows you to do is to exchange any form of value across a digital format. So in the same way that you can send email, you can now send money.
Exactly. Perfect. Perfect way to end. Please tell my listeners how they can get in touch with you, how they can learn more about Bitshares and actually get in on the action, on the cryptocurrency action.
Yep. So first, it's easy. You can just reach me by email. It is Kiril Ravensong at gmail.com. That's KIRIL RAVENSONG at gmail.com. Drop me a line anytime. And when you're getting into Bitshares, super simple. It's bitshares.org. That's BITSHARES.org. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be getting into cryptocurrency first. Most likely, you're going to be getting into Bitcoin, and then from Bitcoin, transferring that into Bitshares.
Nice. Very nice. Thank you so much for being on the show. That was really informative. Very informative. I learned a lot, and I believe that my listeners learned a lot too, which I always like. I've been waiting to get a couple of experts on it, and you and Dylan did a fantastic job. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I hope you guys will come back.
You rock. Much love to you.
Oh, thank you. Much love to you too. I appreciate it. Have a great night.
You too.
You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank Kiril, who did a fantastic job. I want to thank you guys all in the chat. Thank everyone who was listening on SHR Media, and everybody was watching live on YouTube and on Facey. You guys rock.